Hello, my little sugar beasties. Welcome to That's Cakeable. I'm Janine, and hang on, what's that sound? Is that the sound of love? You know, February, Valentine's Day, all that sort of stuff. So I thought that I would create a cute little cake that can be gifted for Valentine's Day or any other occasion really. So I was pinning away on Pinterest, putting things onto boards that I know I'll never use, we all do it, right? And I came across an amazing artist named Penny Black. She creates the most gorgeous sketches of hedgehogs in all sorts of situations. I found this particular image and it inspired me to create this week's tutorial cake, a hedgehog holding balloons. All in all, it's a pretty simple cake. The bas-relief does take a little bit of getting your head around, but the way that I've put it together should make it a lot easier. So whether you want to gift this as a Valentine's gift or just make it for somebody special, I kept mine for myself, you should find it pretty easy to put together. Now while we're on the subject of love, I'd love if you could spread the love, that's a lot of love, by subscribing to my channel and hitting that notification bell so that you're informed every time I upload a new video. It's a tiny little step for you, but it makes a world of difference for me. And hey, consider it a Valentine's gift from you to me. All right guys, I've rambled far too long. Let's get on with the tutorial. So to make the little hedgehog cake, I'm taking a rectangle cake that I've already ganached. If you want to know how I ganache my square cakes, which is the same method, there'll be a link in the description below. This cake is just under 6 inches high and just over 3 inches wide. Now I'm taking some fondant here and I'm rolling it out. It's a pale sort of ivory fondant, using my spacers so that I get the same thickness from top to bottom. And that's exactly why I measured the cake also. We're going to need those measurements to make panels. Before I cut the panels, I take my Dresden tool and I just roughly put in some wood grain effect sort of lines. Some deeper, some thinner, and I do this prior to cutting because if I cut it beforehand, I'd actually skew the fondant and ruin the panel, so it's better to do it beforehand. Using the measurements from the cake, I am now cutting out a panel. And then I take my spacer and I cut small little fence paling panels from that piece of fondant. Now I'm not worried here if they're different heights, I just want to make sure that one side of them is completely flat. That's the part that has to hit the bottom of the cake. I place them on a lightly cornfloured board to set up a little bit firmer to make it easier to place it on the cake later. And they're done. Now I've got to put a top on this cake, so I'm spritzing it with a little bit of water and taking the same coloured fondant, placing that on top and smoothing it out. Get rid of all those nasty little air bubbles. And then I just take a flat blade, in this case a Stanley knife, and cut around flush to the cake on those edges to make a nice straight finish. Take all that excess off. And then I just use my smoothers to tidy it up. Now, of course, we want to continue the wood grain theme, so I'm doing exactly what I did to the panels to the top of the cake with my Dresden tool, just making some rough wood grain finish. Tidy it up a little bit if you've skewed the fondant. Here comes the fun part. Here's the picture that I found on the internet. I sized it to the size that I wanted, and then I cut it into a couple of pieces, a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle. Now I've got a piece of white gum paste, and with those little jigsaw pieces, I am cutting an outline out of the gum paste. Now this gum paste is going to become the base of our bas-relief. Once you cut out the pieces, put the template back on and make sure that it's all fitting. If it isn't, just make any adjustments necessary. I go ahead and do the same with the face and with the little feet. And there are all our pieces already. Okay, so I'm taking a piece of white modeling paste and sort of shaping it into the shape of that first piece that I've made, the body. But it's quite rounded, as you can see. And I'm using the base piece as a template and just smoothing that larger piece of modeling paste over the top and smoothing it down, making sure it all fits and looks pretty much the same shape as the base piece. You do want this nice and rounded though. There we go, I've just used my hand to smooth that out. Then with a pale flesh tone, I'm doing the same for the head. And of course, I pop it up against the body just to make sure everything is matching. Having those base pieces really helps to achieve this bas relief without too much of a headache. Using my reference picture, of course, always use your reference. Then, of course, I went and used the same method for the little feet. I've marked in a section because there are 2 feet with my Dresden tool, and the foot that's actually sitting at the back, you'll see here I'm pushing it down to make it look like it's behind the other foot. And it's as simple as that really. If you want to use this particular picture, I will put a link in the description of where you can find it. Now I'm going to paint this little guy. I started with brown food color and decorator's alcohol, and quite often it does throw a lot of green, so I opted for some water instead and really just watered it down to a watercolor. And on the left side of his body, on his back and the back of his arm and his underside where all the shadowing would be, I very slowly just built up that watercolor until I was happy with how dark it was. Now I'm taking a piping tip, a 1.5 piping tip, which is actually a writing tube, and quite a stiff royal icing, and I'm going to start piping in some little spikes. As you can see, I am following the outside of his body and making sure that I go around in more of a rounded sort of shape, doing it at the front and at the back. And this just helps me keep this shape going all the way around the body. If you've got the spikes going here, there, and everywhere, it's going to look a little bit skew-iff. So I just press the piping bag against the body, put some pressure on the piping bag, lift while releasing the pressure on the piping bag, and I end up with little spikes. It actually didn't take that long. I did overlap a few, it helped with the effect in the end. And there he is, all spiky. Now with a little bit of pink petal dust while that royal icing is drying, I'm going to rosy up his little cheeks and put a little bit of petal dust on his feet. Once again, I'm using my reference picture because, well, that's how I know what colouring to use. I did go with browns instead of greys and blacks. I'm using an edible marker pen to mark in the eye. I also marked in the mouth. I wasn't actually happy with this mouth. I did go back later and fix it up. And I put a little eyebrow in too. A tiny little piece of black modelling paste rolled into a teardrop shape and attached with a dot of royal icing makes his nose. Just making the eye a little bigger. Okay, time to paint the spikes. Now, once your royal icing is nice and dry, of course, you're probably still going to lose bits, but I've taken some more brown food colouring, a warm brown, and with a very soft brush, I'm just brushing over the tops of the little spikes. Dabbing around the outside so that everything sort of melds in and looks uniform. And I also take some slightly more concentrated brown and rub it over in certain sections just to give it a little bit of light and shade. Then you just need to pop him aside to dry. Okay, let's make some balloons. So I've got a piece of pink modelling paste here that I've rolled into a teardrop shape, a blunt end teardrop shape. And with a scribe tool, I'm just making a line across the top. Using my fingers, I just round up those top pieces to make a nice soft heart. And then I have a piece of 20 gauge wire, I believe. I put a little hook in the end, dampen that end, and then pop it right into the base of that heart. I pinch the base of the heart around the wire to make sure it's attached and take off any excess, just like that. And there it is. Go ahead and make as many or as few in whatever colors you like. It's time to attach our panels, so the best glue is royal icing, because once something's attached to royal icing and that royal icing dries, it's going nowhere. I've just put royal icing over one side of that cake, and then I start attaching my fence paling panels. You want to keep them nice and straight against each other, but I like the look of the jagged top. It's completely up to you. You could cut these off to make them even if you wish. I'm just pressing that against the cake nice and firmly with a smoother. Of course, I then went ahead and did the other sides. Now, because they didn't all meet up perfectly, I kept one side open so that I could easily cut off the excess. I am taking a flexi smoother here, placing it against my cake and then using a flat blade to cut off that excess. The flexi smoother just makes sure that I get a nice straight line and don't dig into that ganached cake. Once you've removed the overhang from the other side, you can then go ahead and add the panels to that bare side. Just using my smoothers to make sure they're all on nice and securely. Now I want to make it look a bit more like timber, so I'm taking some very watered down dark brown gel food color and quite liberally plastering that all over the side of the cake. It's scary now, but you'll see the method in my madness. You can see how watery that is. I want it to get all into those cracks and crevices that we created with the Dresden tool. I'm now taking a clean Chuck's wipe that I've dampened and wiping all that excess food colouring off, leaving only the dark parts that have gone into those cracks and crevices. Told you there was a method to my madness. I'm then taking a lighter brown and I am painting that over the entire side of the cake. And if you want to lighten that up a little bit, you just dampen your brush, go over it, dampen your brush again, go over it until you are happy with the colour. Don't forget to get the tops and the backs of those fence palings if you are keeping them above the cake. And that is how it should look. Let's place Mr. Hedgehog. So I've decided on a placement, and to give him a bit of support, I've put a toothpick into the side of the cake. I press him against it and I make a little indent in his body. And then with another toothpick, I continue that indent into his body so that I've got something to secure him to. A little bit of royal icing on the cake and a little bit of royal icing on the back of Mr. Hedgehog. I added another support there, another toothpick, and did the same thing, put a hole on his back where it lined up. Lined him up on the cake, pressed him firmly against it, and he sat there like a dream. Just cleaning up the royal icing mess that I made. Here are our balloons. Now, I'm putting this straight in. If you are going to put this straight into cake, remember to food safe your wires with some aluminium foil tape or some safety seal. This is just for me, so I didn't. And you can see how close I'm putting these to the side of that cake. But be careful, people, because see that? That can happen. Because I'm putting it so close to the side of the cake, I didn't take notice. I didn't push it straight down. Instead, I was on a slight angle and I took it all the way through the front panel. So be careful not to do that. Now I'm taking some glaze and I'm just glazing all of my little balloons to make them a little bit more balloon-like. That looks pretty. Now I've got to make a little hand. Now I'm showing you one way I made the hand here. This is a teardrop shape that I've flattened down. And this is how you make the hand. It's just not how you attach the hand. So I attached it sort of the wrong way. It just doesn't make sense. It took me like 3 goes to get the hand in the right direction. Make sure you look at your reference picture. So I just attached a hand and used my Dresden tool to make his little fist, I suppose. I did change it later, remove the hand to the right direction. And if you need some extra sort of, I don't know, length between the arm and the hand, just add a bit of royal icing in between and give it a paint with that brown. And then just to finish it off, I put some heart ribbon around the base of the cake, attaching it with some glue stick on the ribbon, not on the cake. And a little matching bow to go on the front, just to make it a bit more Valentine's-y, I suppose. And that is it, guys. That is how you create this gorgeous little hedgehog holding balloons cake inspired by the art of Penny Black. So if you do celebrate Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day to you. If you don't celebrate Valentine's Day, don't forget to show yourself some love, because we're all worth it, right? And if you loved this video, please don't forget to give it a like. And like I said earlier, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're worded up every time I upload a new video. That's enough from me. It's all said and done. But you know what you gotta do now? What am I, in the wheels? Go and get your cake on. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.